Omega. Worthless. I begged them to stop. That was their first mistake.
They laughed when she begged, until the Alpha King went on his knees for her. Naira Veilska's voice cracked as the words left her lips, swallowed by the roaring laughter of the gathered pack. The great stone hall smelled of sweat, firewood, and dominance, thick, suffocating. Wolves lined the walls, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim torchlight, watching her like she was already broken. Her knees pressed hard into the cold marble floor, her thin dress clinging to her trembling body. She could feel every gaze, every whisper, every ounce of judgment. An Omega begging in front of Alphas was humiliation enough, but tonight it was worse. Tonight she was being given away. "Please," she whispered again, softer this time, her throat dry, her chest tight with something heavier than fear. "Don't do this." But her voice meant nothing here, not anymore. At the center of the hall stood Lysara Keld, her lips curled in satisfaction, golden hair cascading over her shoulders like a crown she didn't earn, but took. Beside her stood Brindor Hale, Naira's supposed mate, his expression cold, detached, like Naira had never mattered at all. "You were never fit to stand beside me," Brindor said flatly, his voice carrying easily across the silent room. "An Omega with no rank, no strength, no value." The words struck harder than any physical blow. Naira's fingers curled into the floor as her bond with him, once warm, once alive, shattered completely. She felt it tear inside her chest, a sharp, invisible rip that stole her breath. The mate bond, gone, rejected, in front of everyone. And still they weren't done. "You should be grateful," Lysara added smoothly, stepping closer, her heels echoing like judgment. "The Alpha King himself has requested an Omega for the night." A murmur spread through the hall, not curiosity, anticipation. Naira's heart dropped. The Alpha King, Kale Dravener, a name spoken with fear, with reverence, with warning. He didn't attend pack ceremonies, he didn't take mates, he didn't touch anyone without reason. "You'll serve him," Lysara continued, her voice sweet but sharp as a blade. "And if you survive the night," she tilted her head, smiling faintly, "perhaps you'll earn a place as something useful." The implication hung heavy in the air. Not a person, not a wolf, just something to be used. The doors of the hall creaked open slowly, the sound cutting through the tension like a blade. Silence fell instantly. Even the air seemed to still. Heavy footsteps echoed, measured, powerful, unhurried. And then he entered, Kale Dravener, the Alpha King. He didn't need to announce himself. His presence alone bent the room, tall, broad, wrapped in dark leathers that carried the scent of pine, iron, and something wild, ancient. His silver eyes scanned the room once, sharp and unreadable, before landing on Naira. The moment they met hers, everything inside her stilled. Not fear, not exactly, something deeper, something that didn't make sense. A pull, low, dangerous, alive. Naira lowered her gaze quickly, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. This was the man she was being handed to like an offering, like she didn't matter, like her body wasn't hers anymore. The weight of it pressed down on her chest until it hurt to breathe. Kale said nothing at first. He simply walked forward, his boots striking the floor with quiet authority, each step tightening the invisible grip around the room. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. The power. The control. "This is what you offer me." His voice finally broke the silence, low, calm, but carrying something dangerous beneath it. Not anger, not yet, but close. Lysara stepped forward quickly, bowing her head slightly. "A gift, your majesty, an Omega without ties, without value, entirely yours to—" "Enough." Kale's voice cut through hers like steel. The room froze. Naira's breath hitched as she slowly lifted her eyes again. His gaze hadn't left her, not once. And now something in it had changed. Darker, sharper, focused. He crouched down slowly, bringing himself level with her kneeling form. Gasps echoed softly around the hall, an Alpha King lowering himself. For an Omega, it didn't make sense. None of this did. Naira's heart pounded as his hand reached out, not rough, not claiming, but deliberate. His fingers tilted her chin upward, forcing her to meet his eyes fully this time. Silver met storm gray, and the world seemed to narrow to just that moment. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly, not as a king, not as a ruler, but as something else entirely, something personal. Naira's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her emotions tangled, fear, confusion, pain, all crashing together too fast. Behind her, she could feel Brindor's stare, Lysara's tension. The entire pack holding its breath, waiting, watching, But Kale didn't look at them. He didn't care about them. Not right now. He stood abruptly, his presence shifting, no longer controlled but coiled ready, dangerous. "You brought me an offering," he said, his voice louder now, echoing across the hall. "But you misunderstand something." His gaze flicked briefly toward Lysara, toward Brindor, toward every wolf who had laughed, and then back to Naira. His jaw tightened. "She is not yours to give." The words hit like thunder. Confusion erupted instantly, whispers, gasps, disbelief. Naira's heart skipped. What did that mean? What was happening? This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to endure the night. Survive. Disappear, not this. Kale stepped forward again, positioning himself slightly in front of her now, subtle but unmistakable, protective. "From this moment forward," he continued, his voice steady but carrying a weight that silenced every doubt, "Naira Veilska belongs to no pack." A pause. "Then she belongs to me." The room exploded. Arabic Khalif, Arabic Tain, Arabic Ta, Arabic Rot, Arabic Khalif, Arabic Dada. Shock, rage, but Naira didn't hear any of it clearly. Her mind was spinning too fast. Belongs to him. The Alpha King, why? None of this made sense. None of it. But before she could process it, before anyone could challenge it, Kale turned slightly, his expression darkening. "And if any of you think to question me," his eyes flashed faintly silver, "try." Silence slammed back into the room like a force. Naira's breath came unevenly as she stared at the ground, her body still trembling, but for a completely different reason now. Something had shifted, something irreversible. She wasn't being offered anymore. She had been taken. Claimed not like prey, but not like anything she understood either. And as Kale extended his hand toward her, not commanding, but waiting, Naira hesitated for just a second before placing her trembling fingers into his. The moment their skin touched, something inside her snapped awake. Not pain. Not fear. Power. And far beneath it, something ancient stirred. Naira's eyes widened. Because for the first time in her life, her wolf answered back. The moment Naira's fingers touched Kale Dravener's hand, the world didn't just shift, it broke. A sharp pulse shot through her veins, like fire and ice colliding beneath her skin, forcing a gasp from her lips as her body stiffened. The bond. Not the broken, hollow echo Brindor had left behind, but something deeper, older, alive in a way she had never felt before. It wrapped around her chest, coiling tight, not suffocating, but anchoring. Her wolf, silent her entire life, stirred violently beneath the surface, pressing forward like it had been waiting for this exact moment. Naira's grip tightened instinctively, her breathing uneven as she tried to understand what was happening. This wasn't normal. Omegas didn't react like this. They didn't awaken power. They didn't burn with something that felt dangerously close to strength. Kale felt it too. His jaw clenched, the faintest flicker of something unreadable crossing his face before it vanished behind cold control. But his grip on her hand didn't loosen. If anything, it steadied her, grounded her. Around them, the hall remained frozen in stunned silence, the earlier chaos now replaced with something far heavier, fear. No one moved, no one spoke, because what had just happened shouldn't exist. Orvek Draal, one of the oldest elders, stepped forward slowly, his voice rough with disbelief. "Your Majesty, that is not possible." His eyes darted between them, narrowing. "An Omega cannot form such a reaction. There are no records." "Then your records are wrong," Kale cut in sharply, not even sparing him a glance. His attention remained fixed on Naira. Naira swallowed hard, her pulse still racing as she tried to pull her hand back. But Kale didn't let go, not forcefully, not painfully, just firm. "What did you do to me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, confusion and fear threading through every word. Her storm-gray eyes searched his face, desperate for answers he didn't seem ready to give. For a moment, Kale said nothing. Then, quietly, low enough that only she could hear, "I didn't do anything." His gaze darkened slightly. "You've always had it." The words hit her like another shockwave. Always, that wasn't possible. She had spent her entire life as nothing, weak, overlooked, disposable. Her wolf had never answered. Not once. Not until now. So how could he say something like that? Behind them, Lysara's composure cracked. "This is absurd," she snapped, stepping forward, her voice sharp with barely concealed rage. "She is an Omega. She has no lineage, no status, no power. You cannot simply—" Kale turned his head slowly. That was all it took. The temperature in the room seemed to drop instantly. "I can do whatever I choose," he said calmly, too calmly. the kind of calm that came before something dangerous. Lysara froze mid-step, her lips parting, but no sound came out this time. Even Brindor, who had stood so confidently before, now shifted uncomfortably under Kale's gaze. The Alpha King didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Power radiated from him in waves, silent, suffocating authority that made resistance feel foolish. Naira felt it differently, not as pressure but as heat, as something that pulled instead of pushed, and that terrified her more than anything else. "You don't understand," she said suddenly, pulling her hand back this time with more force, breaking the contact. The moment she did, the sensation dulled but didn't disappear. It lingered beneath her skin, restless, awake. "I don't belong with you," she continued, shaking her head slightly, her voice trembling despite her effort to stay steady. "I don't belong anywhere." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Raw, honest, painful. For a second, something flickered in Kale's expression again, something almost human. But it vanished just as quickly. "You're wrong," he said simply. Before she could respond, a sudden commotion erupted at the far end of the hall. The large doors burst open again, but this time it wasn't controlled. It was chaotic, urgent. A guard stumbled in breathless, his clothes torn, the sharp scent of blood hitting the air instantly. "Your Majesty," he gasped, dropping to one knee, struggling to catch his breath. "The eastern border, it's under attack." The room shifted instantly. Tension snapped into something sharper, more dangerous. Kale's posture changed, not visibly dramatic but unmistakable. Focused, deadly. "By who?" he asked, his tone cold and precise. The guard hesitated, just for a second. And in that second, something uneasy crawled up Naira's spine. "They bear no packmark," the guard said finally, his voice low. "But they're not rogues." A murmur rippled through the room again, this time laced with fear instead of curiosity. Not rogues, not a known pack. That left only one possibility, something worse, something no one wanted to name out loud. Kale's eyes darkened, his expression hardening completely now. "How many?" "Dozens," the guard replied. "And they're moving fast." Silence followed, heavy, calculated. Then Kale turned slightly toward Naira. "Of all people, you're coming with me," he said. Naira blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "No, I'm not, I can't." "You can," Kale interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "And you will." Her heart pounded harder now, panic creeping in. "Why would you take me to a battlefield?" she demanded, her voice rising slightly. "I'll only get in the way." The words tasted bitter, familiar, but Kale shook his head once. "No," he said, "you won't." His gaze held hers again, steady, certain in a way that made her chest tighten. "Whatever is happening to you," he paused briefly, "it's not a coincidence." Before she could argue further, he turned away, already issuing commands, his voice cutting clean through the tension. Orders, movements, strategy. The room came alive again, but this time it wasn't about her humiliation. It was about war. Naira stood frozen for a moment, her mind racing, her body still buzzing faintly with that strange, awakening energy. None of this made sense. None of it. But one thing was clear, her life, whatever it had been before, was gone now. Completely. And as she followed Kale out of the hall, her bare feet barely making a sound against the stone, she didn't realize that Lysara was watching her. Not with anger, but with something far more dangerous. Fear. Cold night air hit Naira the moment she stepped outside, sharp and biting, carrying the metallic scent of blood from miles away. The forest stretched wide beyond the stronghold, dark and restless under a fractured moon, its shadows shifting like something alive. Torches flared as warriors rushed past, their movements urgent, their expressions hard. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a warning. This was war. Naira wrapped her arms around herself instinctively, her thin dress offering little protection against the chill, but she barely felt it. Her focus was elsewhere, inside her. That same strange energy pulsed again, low and steady, like something waking up piece by piece. Her wolf. It wasn't silent anymore. It wasn't weak. It was watching, waiting. And for the first time in her life, Naira was afraid of what she might become. Kale didn't slow down as he moved ahead, his presence cutting through the chaos with quiet authority. Warriors shifted aside for him without hesitation, their respect absolute. Naira struggled to keep up, her bare feet barely touching the ground as she followed. "I don't understand why I'm here," she said finally, her voice tight as she caught up beside him. "You're walking into a fight and you brought me." Her tone wasn't defiant. It was confused, frustrated. Cale glanced at her briefly, his silver eyes unreadable even in the dim torchlight. "Because something is coming," he said, "and it's not just for the border." His gaze shifted forward again, sharper now. "It's for you." The words sent a chill deeper than the night air straight down her spine. Before she could respond, a deafening howl split through the forest. Not a normal wolf call. This one was distorted, longer, harsher, layered with something unnatural that made Naira's chest tighten instantly. The warriors around them tensed, some shifting partially, claws extending, eyes glowing. "They're close," one of them muttered. Cale stopped walking. The sudden stillness around him was almost more terrifying than movement. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. Not a command this time, a warning. Naira swallowed hard, nodding once, even though her heart was hammering so loud she could barely hear anything else. The forest ahead moved, not with wind, with presence. And then they emerged. Figures stepped out from the shadows one by one, their forms tall, twisted, not fully wolf, not fully human. Their eyes burned an unnatural red, their movements jerky but controlled, like something else was pulling their strings. Naira's breath caught. "What are they?" she whispered. Cale didn't answer immediately. His gaze hardened, his body shifting slightly as power coiled beneath his skin. "They shouldn't exist," he said finally. That was worse than any explanation. The creatures snarled low, circling slowly, their attention locked not on the warriors, on her. Naira felt it instantly. That pull again, but this time it wasn't hers, it was theirs, and it was hungry. "They can smell it," Cale said under his breath. "Smell what?" Naira asked, panic rising. "You." The word hadn't even fully settled before one of the creatures lunged. Everything exploded into motion. Cale moved first, fast, precise, deadly. The sound of impact echoed as he intercepted the creature midair, his strike sending it crashing into a tree with enough force to crack wood. Warriors shifted fully now, wolves bursting forward into the fight, snarls and claws tearing through the night. Naira stumbled back, her breath coming in sharp bursts as chaos surrounded her. She had never seen violence like this, raw, brutal, uncontrolled. But what terrified her most was what was happening inside her. The closer the creatures got, the stronger that energy surged. Not fear, not panic, something darker, sharper, alive. Another creature broke through the line, rushing straight toward her. Naira froze. For half a second. Then, something snapped. The world slowed. Her vision sharpened unnaturally, every movement clear, every sound crisp. Her heartbeat steadied instead of racing, and her body moved, not like hers, not like an Omega's. She stepped forward instead of back. Her hand shot out instinctively, catching the creature's throat mid-lunge. The impact alone should have thrown her, but it didn't. Her grip tightened without effort. The creature thrashed, snarling, but Naira didn't flinch. Her eyes darkened slightly, something flickering beneath the surface. And then, without thinking, she slammed it into the ground. Hard. The earth cracked beneath the force. Silence rippled outward for a split second. Even the battle paused. Naira stared down at what she had just done, her chest rising slowly, not with exhaustion but with control. Her fingers loosened slightly, releasing the creature as it lay stunned, barely moving. Her mind struggled to catch up. That wasn't possible. She shouldn't be able to do that. She wasn't strong. She wasn't anything. So how? "Naira." Cale's voice cut through the moment. She looked up just as another creature lunged from behind. Too fast. Too close. But before it could reach her, Cale was there. His hand wrapped around the creature's skull, stopping it mid-strike. His expression wasn't calm anymore. It was something far more dangerous. His eyes burned silver, his jaw tight as he crushed the creature's head with a single motion. The body dropped instantly. Dead. Silence followed again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was realization. Cale turned slowly toward her. Not as a king. Not as a protector. But as something that had just seen something impossible. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Naira's breath caught. Because she didn't have an answer. And deep inside her, something ancient smiled. The forest didn't return to normal after the fight. It held its breath. Smoke drifted low across the ground, mixing with the metallic scent of blood and something darker, something wrong. Naira stood frozen where she was, her hands trembling now not from fear, but from the fatting echo of power that had surged through her moments ago. It hadn't felt like panic. It hadn't felt like survival. It had felt controlled, intentional, and that terrified her more than the creatures ever could. Around her, warriors slowly began to regroup, their movements cautious, their eyes shifting toward her when they thought she wouldn't notice. But she noticed. Every stare, every whisper. The way they stepped just slightly farther away than necessary. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was something else now, something they didn't understand. Cale hadn't moved. He stood a few feet away, his posture still, his gaze locked on her like he was trying to see past her skin, past her identity, into whatever had just revealed itself. Naira swallowed hard under the weight of it, her chest tightening. "I didn't mean to do that," she said finally, her voice quieter, now unsteady. It sounded weak compared to what she had just done, compared to what she had just become. Cale's expression didn't change. "That's the problem," he replied. His tone wasn't harsh. It was worse, certain, the kind of certainty that didn't leave room for comfort. Naira's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" she asked, taking a small step back without realizing it. For the first time since she met him, she wasn't sure if he was on her side anymore. Cale exhaled slowly, his gaze shifting briefly toward the fallen creatures scattered across the clearing. "Those things," he said, his voice low, measured, "aren't just enemies, they're hunters." His eyes returned to her, sharper now, focused. "And they weren't here for territory." Naira's breath caught. She already knew the answer, but hearing it out loud still made something inside her tighten painfully. "They were here for me," she said. It wasn't a question. Cale didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. The silence confirmed it. Naira's mind spun, pieces of her life, things she had ignored, things she had accepted, suddenly shifting into something else entirely. "I'm just an Omega," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I've always been—" "No," Cale cut in firmly. The word landed hard. "You've been told you are," he continued, stepping closer now, not threatening but unyielding. "There's a difference." Naira's pulse quickened again, confusion mixing with something sharper, something that almost felt like anger. "Then what am I?" she demanded, her voice rising despite herself. "Because I don't know anymore." The words broke out of her, raw, unfiltered. For a moment, neither of them moved. The forest around them remained eerily quiet, like even the night was waiting for the answer. Cale studied her carefully, his gaze tracing every detail, not with judgment, but with calculation. Like he was piecing something together, something important, something dangerous. "I don't know," he said finally. That was worse than any answer. Naira's shoulders tensed, her breath uneven again as frustration bubbled beneath the surface. "You brought me here because you thought I was something," she said, her voice tight. "Now you're saying you don't even know what that is." Cale didn't react to the edge in her tone. If anything, his focus sharpened. "I brought you here because whatever you are—" He paused briefly, his jaw tightening slightly. "The world is already moving against it." A chill ran through her. Not just fear this time, realization. She wasn't just caught in something. She was the center of it. A sudden crack of a branch echoed from deeper within the forest. Every warrior tensed instantly. Cale's head turned sharply, his expression shifting back into something lethal in an instant. "Stay close," he said quietly, his voice dropping. Naira didn't argue this time. She stepped closer without hesitation, her senses sharper now, more aware of every sound, every shift in the air. Something was coming. But it didn't feel like the creatures from before. This felt different, slower, intentional. A figure stepped out from the shadows, not twisted, not monstrous, but cloaked in dark fabric that seemed to blend with the night itself. Her presence was quiet, but heavy, old, powerful in a way that didn't need to be loud. Selene Vorath. Naira didn't know her name, but her body reacted instantly. Her wolf stirred again, but this time it didn't push forward. It bowed. Naira's breath caught sharply as the realization hit her before logic could catch up. That had never happened before, not even with Cale. The cloaked woman's eyes landed on her slowly, glowing faintly beneath the hood, not silver, not gold, but something deeper, ancient, knowing. "So," the woman said softly, her voice calm but carrying through the clearing like a whisper that refused to be ignored. "They finally found you." Naira's heart pounded. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely steady. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, just one step, and that alone made several warriors shift uneasily. Kale didn't move, but his entire body tensed. "She shouldn't be here," he said quietly, his tone sharp with warning. Seleni's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "And yet," she replied, her gaze still locked on Naira, "she always was." Naira felt the ground shift beneath her, not physically, but something deeper, like a truth she had never known was being pulled toward the surface whether she wanted it or not. "I don't understand," she whispered, shaking her head slightly. "What are you talking about?" Selene tilted her head, studying her like one would study a memory long lost and suddenly found again. "You will," she said simply. Then her expression changed. Just slightly. Enough to send a cold ripple through the clearing. "But not here." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Selene finally looked at him. And for the first time, something like tension passed between them. Not fear. Not challenge. Recognition. "They've already begun moving," she said quietly. Naira's stomach dropped. "Who?" she asked. Selene's gaze returned to her. And this time, there was no softness in it. "The ones who killed your bloodline." Silence hit like a physical force. Naira's breath stopped. Her mind went completely blank. Bloodline. Killed. That wasn't possible. She had no bloodline. She had no history. She had nothing. "Run," Selene said suddenly. Too suddenly. Kale turned sharply. "What?" But it was already too late. The ground beneath them trembled. Not lightly. Violently. And from the darkness beyond the trees, something massive began to move. Not a creature. Not a wolf. Something far worse. Naira's heart slammed against her chest as her wolf surged violently again. Not in fear. In recognition. And this time, it wasn't waking up. It was remembering. The ground didn't just shake, it roared. Trees splintered as something massive pushed through the forest, its presence swallowing the night whole. Naira stumbled back, her breath catching as the air thickened with a crushing, ancient pressure that made even the strongest wolves hesitate. This wasn't like the creatures before. This wasn't something twisted or corrupted. This felt deliberate, powerful, old in a way that made her bones ache. Her wolf surged violently beneath her skin, not in fear, but in recognition so intense it hurt. Images flickered at the edge of her mind, shadows, fire, voices she didn't understand. She clutched her head briefly, trying to steady herself. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the earth itself. Kale stepped forward instantly, positioning himself between her and whatever was coming. His body tensed, power coiling beneath his skin like a storm ready to break. "Everyone fall back," he ordered sharply, his voice cutting through the chaos. Warriors hesitated, but only for a second before obeying, retreating into defensive positions. That alone told Naira everything she needed to know. If Kale was telling them to fall back, then this wasn't a fight they could win easily. "You need to leave," he said without turning to her. Not a suggestion. Not even a command. A fact. Naira shook her head immediately, her heart racing. "No," she said, surprising even herself. "You said this was about me, then I'm not running." The words felt reckless, but right. Something inside her refused to step back now. Kale exhaled sharply like he was losing patience, but also control. "You don't understand what you're standing in front of," he said, his tone lower now, dangerous. Naira took a step closer instead of back, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Then explain it to me," she shot back. For a brief moment, silence stretched between them, tense, charged, fragile. Then Kale turned. And for the first time, Naira saw it clearly. Not just power, not just control, but something else. Something darker. His eyes burned brighter silver now, almost glowing in the dim light, his jaw tight as if he was holding something back with sheer force. "That," he said quietly, "is not something I can explain." The forest exploded. A massive form burst through the trees, its impact shaking the ground hard enough to knock Naira off balance. She fell to one knee, her breath leaving her lungs in a sharp gasp as she looked up, and everything inside her stilled. It wasn't a wolf. Not fully. Its size alone was wrong, towering, unnatural, its body covered in dark, armored fur that seemed to absorb light instead of reflect it. Its eyes burned the same unnatural red as the creature's before, but deeper. Smarter. A low growl rumbled from its chest, vibrating through the air like thunder. And it was looking directly at her. Not Kale, not the warriors, her. Naira's heart pounded painfully as something inside her twisted again, that pull. Stronger now, louder, calling to something buried deep within her. "It found you," Selene murmured quietly behind them. Kale didn't respond. He moved. Vast. In a blur of motion, he shifted, his form breaking apart and reforming into something far more dangerous. His wolf was massive, silver-black, power radiating off him in waves that pushed the air itself outward. He didn't hesitate. He launched forward, slamming into the creature with a force that echoed through the clearing. The impact alone shook the ground again, sending debris flying as both beasts crashed through the trees. The sound of claws, snarls, and raw power colliding filled the forest. Naira pushed herself up, her chest tight, her body trembling, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming energy building inside her. Watching him fight triggered something deeper. "Don't move," Selene said suddenly, her voice firm now. Naira barely heard her. Her eyes were locked on Kale. On the way he moved, the way he fought, the way his power bled into the air with every strike. And something inside her responded. Not passively. Actively. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. The chaos around her faded into something distant, muted. And then, she stepped forward. "Naira," Selene's voice sharpened, but it was too late. The moment Naira crossed that invisible line, the creature turned away from Kale and lunged for her. Everything slowed again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was clarity. Naira didn't think. She moved. Her body shifted, not fully, not like a wolf, but something in between. Her senses sharpened, her strength surged, her vision narrowing into perfect focus. She caught the creature's strike midair, just like before, but this time it wasn't enough. The force slammed into her, driving her backward as the ground cracked beneath her feet. Pain shot through her arms, but she didn't let go. Her teeth clenched, her eyes darkening as something deeper pushed forward. "You're not taking me," she growled, her voice layered, something else echoing beneath it. The creature snarled back. And then, it spoke. "You belong to us." Naira froze. Just for a second. That was all it needed. The creature's claws tore forward, but before they could reach her, Kale hit it from the side, with a force that shattered the moment completely. Ray. Pure. Uncontrolled. He didn't hold back this time. His wolf tore into the creature with a brutality that wasn't strategic, it was personal. Each strike was heavier, sharper, fueled by something deeper than duty. The forest echoed with the violence of it, the sheer intensity of his power overwhelming everything else. Naira stumbled back, her breath uneven again as she watched him. This wasn't the controlled king from before. This was something else. Something raw, dangerous. And it wasn't just about the threat anymore. It was about her. "Kale, stop," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. For a split second, he did. His movements faltered just slightly. His head turned toward her. And in that moment, she saw it. Not just rage. Not just power. But something far more dangerous. Possession. The creature used that hesitation. It struck again. This time, it didn't go for Kale. It went for Naira. Too fast. Too close. Naira's body reacted, but not fast enough. The claws sliced through the air. And then, stopped. Mid-motion. Frozen. The entire forest went still. The creature's body locked in place, its eyes widening slightly as something unseen held it there. Naira's breath caught. Because she hadn't touched it. She hadn't moved. But her hand, was raised, and the air around it was trembling. Seleni's voice broke the silence, low and steady. It's happening. Naira's heart pounded as she stared at the creature, held in place by something she couldn't see, but could feel. Control. Power. Not borrowed. Not given. Her own. And as her eyes slowly lifted, they weren't storm gray anymore. They glowed. Faint. Silver. Kale stared at her. Not in confusion. Not in fear. But in realization. And that realization hit harder than anything else. Because whatever Naira Veilska truly was, she wasn't just rare. She was something the world had been trying to erase. And they had just failed. The forest held its breath around her. Naira stood frozen, her arms still raised, fingers slightly curled as if gripping something invisible, and yet the massive creature remained suspended in the air, its body trembling violently against a force it could not break. The ground beneath her feet cracked softly, thin lines spreading outward like veins responding to her pulse. She didn't understand what she was doing. She wasn't even sure she was doing anything at all. It felt instinctive, natural in a way that made no sense. Her chest rose and fell slowly, her breathing controlled despite the chaos moments ago. And her eyes, still glowing faint silver, reflected something deeper than fear. Awareness, power, recognition. Like a part of her that had been buried for years had finally opened its eyes and now refused to go back to sleep. Kale didn't move. Not because he couldn't. Because he was watching. Really watching. Every shift in her body, every flicker of energy in the air around her. His wolf had stilled completely, its earlier rage gone, replaced by something far more focused. Calculating, and beneath that, something dangerously close to awe. "Naira," he said quietly, his voice no longer commanding, no longer sharp, careful, like one wrong move might break something fragile or unleash something unstoppable. Her name sounded different now, not like an omega, not like something weak, like something important. Naira didn't respond. Her gaze was locked on the creature, her mind strangely clear despite the questions screaming beneath the surface. "Let it go," Selene said softly from behind her. Naira's fingers twitched slightly. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the pressure snapped. The creature crashed violently into the ground, the impact echoing through the clearing as dust and debris burst outward. It tried to move, but it couldn't. Not fully. Something had broken inside it, not physically, something deeper. Its red eyes flickered, unstable now, uncertain. Naira staggered slightly as the energy drained from her body, her raised arm lowering slowly as the glow in her eyes faded back to storm gray. Her breath hitched sharply as reality rushed back in all at once, loud, overwhelming, too much. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. No one answered immediately. Because they were all staring at her. Not with doubt anymore. Not with confusion. With certainty. Selene stepped forward first, her gaze steady, her expression unreadable, but her presence no longer felt distant. It felt respectful, careful even. "You've crossed the threshold," she said quietly. Naira frowned slightly, still trying to steady her breathing. "What threshold?" she asked. Her voice sounded small again, but something in it had changed. It didn't carry the same weakness anymore. Selene studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "The one they tried to keep you from ever reaching." Naira's chest tightened. "They?" she asked. Selene's eyes darkened slightly. "The ones who erased your bloodline." Silence fell again, but this time it was heavier. Kale's jaw tightened. "You're certain?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, but sharp beneath it. Selene nodded once. "I was there," she said simply. Naira's breath stopped. "You what?" she whispered, her mind struggling to process the words. "That doesn't make sense. I don't have a bloodline. I don't have." "You have one of the oldest," Selene interrupted. Not harsh, not loud, just final, the kind of truth that didn't need force behind it. "Older than any current pack, older than the alpha hierarchy itself." Naira shook her head instinctively, stepping back slightly. "No," she said quickly. "That's not possible. I grew up with nothing, no family, no history." No one ever said. Because no one was supposed to know you existed, Selene said. The words hit harder than anything else. Naira's chest tightened painfully. What are you saying? She asked, her voice trembling now not from weakness, but from something breaking open inside her. Selene took another step closer. Slow, intentional. They didn't just erase your bloodline, she said quietly. They hunted it. Naira's vision blurred for a second. Her mind flooded with fragments, things that didn't feel like memories but weren't entirely unfamiliar either. Shadows moving through fire, voices shouting, a child running, a hand pulling her away, the feeling of something being taken from her, something important, something she didn't understand. They killed everyone connected to it, Selene continued, her voice softer now, but heavier. Every trace, every record, every heir. Naira's breath came faster. Then how am I? Because someone broke the rule. Silence. Complete. Absolute. Kale's gaze snapped to Selene. Who? He asked. Selene didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained on Naira. You weren't supposed to survive, she said instead. Naira felt something inside her chest twist sharply. Not pain. Something deeper. And yet, Selene tilted her head slightly, studying her with quiet intensity. Here you are. A sudden low growl pulled everyone's attention back to the creature on the ground. It was still alive. Barely. Its red eyes flickered as it struggled to lift its head, its gaze locking onto Naira once more. But this time, there was no hunger in it. No aggression. Only recognition. You remember, it rasped, its voice distorted, but clearer than before. Naira froze. Her heart pounded violently again. I don't know what you're talking about, she said quickly, shaking her head, but her voice lacked conviction. The creature let out a broken sound, almost like a laugh. They failed, it murmured. Kale stepped forward instantly, his expression hardening. Enough. But the creature didn't look at him. It kept its eyes on Naira. They will come for you now, it said. The words sent a chill through the clearing. Who? Naira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The creature's lips twitched slightly. And then, they already have. The ground trembled again. Not like before. This time, sharper, closer, more controlled. Kale's head snapped toward the forest edge. His entire body tensed instantly. Get behind me, he said sharply. But Naira didn't move. Because this time, she felt it too. Not like a threat. Not like fear. Like something calling. Something familiar. And as the trees at the edge of the clearing slowly parted, a group of figures stepped forward. Not twisted. Not monstrous. Perfect. Too perfect. Their eyes glowed the same faint silver hers had moments ago. Naira's breath caught. Because deep inside her, her wolf didn't react with fear. It reacted with recognition. And this time, it didn't bow. It answered. The forest didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a threshold. Naira stood still as the figures stepped fully into the clearing, their movements calm, controlled, nothing like the chaos that had come before them. They didn't rush. They didn't threaten. They simply arrived. There were 5 of them, tall, composed. Their presence carried weight, not loud like Kale's dominance, but deeper, older, balanced. Their eyes glowed faint silver, just like hers had moments ago, and that alone made Naira's chest tight. She didn't know them. She had never seen them before. And yet, something inside her recognized them instantly, not as strangers, not as enemies, as something connected. Her wolf stirred again, not in warning, but in response, like a voice answering a call it had been waiting years to hear. Kale stepped forward without hesitation, placing himself slightly in front of Naira again, but this time the movement felt different, not just protective, defensive. His shoulders squared, his presence sharpening as his gaze locked onto the figures. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice low, dangerous. The air around him shifted again, that familiar pressure building, but the figures didn't react, not even slightly. The one in front, a man with dark hair streaked faintly with silver, tilted his head, studying Cale with quiet interest. "And yet," he replied calmly, "we are." His voice was smooth, controlled, but carried something beneath it that made even the surrounding warriors tense instinctively. Not fear, instinct. Naira stepped forward before she realized she was moving. "Wait," she said quickly, her voice cutting through the tension. Cale's arm shifted slightly as if to stop her, but he didn't touch her. Didn't dare. The man's gaze moved to her. And something changed. Subtle, but undeniable. Recognition. Not curiosity. Not surprise. Recognition. Naira's breath caught as that same feeling surged inside her again, stronger this time, clearer. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The man held her gaze for a long moment before answering. "The ones who have been looking for you," he said simply. Naira's stomach dropped. The words hit differently than the creature's warning. This wasn't a threat. This was purpose. Cale's voice cut in sharply. "She's under my protection." The air shifted instantly. The man's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes hardened slightly. "Protection," he repeated almost thoughtfully. "From what?" His gaze flicked briefly toward the fallen creature, then back to Cale. "From them," a pause, "or from us?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Cale didn't answer. His silence said enough. The man exhaled quietly, almost amused, but there was no humor in it. "You don't understand what she is," he said. "I understand enough," Cale replied. "No," the man said calmly. "You don't." Naira's pulse quickened. "Then explain it," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through both of them. "Because everyone keeps talking like I'm something, but no one is actually telling me what that is." The frustration finally broke through fully now, sharp and undeniable. She stepped forward again, this time deliberately, until she stood just slightly ahead of Cale. The movement didn't go unnoticed, not by him, not by them. The man's gaze softened slightly, not in pity, in respect. "You are not Omega," he said. Naira's breath hitched. "You never were." Silence. Complete. Final. Her mind struggled to process the words, but her body already knew. "Then what am I?" she asked, her voice quieter now, but stronger. The man took a step closer. And for the first time, Cale moved to block him. But the man stopped on his own. Not out of fear. Out of choice. "You are the last heir of the Astrix bloodline," he said. The name meant nothing to her. And yet, everything inside her reacted. Her wolf surged forward again, not violently this time, but fully, present, awake. Naira staggered slightly as the word echoed in her mind, like something unlocking. "Eh, what?" she whispered. Selene stepped forward quietly from behind. "An ancient line," she said, her voice steady. "Before Pax, before the Alpha structure, before hierarchy." Naira's chest tightened. "That doesn't make sense," she said, shaking her head slightly. "Then why was I treated like nothing? Why did no one?" "Because you're kind," Selene continued softly. "We're not meant to exist anymore." The words landed heavy. "Your bloodline doesn't follow Alpha rules," the man added. "It doesn't submit, it doesn't rank." Naira's heart pounded harder. "Then what does it do?" she asked. The man held her gaze. "It leads." Silence exploded in her mind. Not loud, but overwhelming. Everything she had ever been told, everything she had accepted, shattered in an instant. "I don't believe you," she said quickly. But her voice wavered. The man didn't react. "You don't have to," he replied calmly. "Your power already does." Naira's hands clenched slightly at her sides. That energy flickered again, low, controlled, but undeniable. Cale stepped forward again, his presence shifting, not just protective now, but territorial. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said firmly. The man finally looked at him fully. And this time, there was no neutrality in his gaze. "You don't get to decide that," he said. A beat of silence followed. Then, Naira spoke. I do. Both of them turned to her instantly. Her heart pounded, but her posture didn't break. Not this time. I'm done being told what I am, she said, her voice steady despite everything. And I'm definitely done being moved around like I belong to someone. Her eyes flicked briefly to Cale, not accusing, but clear, then back to the man. So no one decides anything for me. Silence. But it wasn't tense anymore. It was shifting. The man studied her carefully, then nodded once. Good, he said. Naira frowned slightly. Good, she repeated. A faint smile touched his lips, brief, controlled. You're starting to sound like one of us. Before she could respond, Cale's voice cut in, sharper this time. This isn't over. The man's gaze shifted back to him. No, he agreed calmly. It's just beginning. And as those words settled into the air, Naira felt it. Not outside. Not from them. From within. Something deeper had fully awakened now. Not just power. Not just identity. Purpose. And for the first time, it didn't scare her. It called her. The forest didn't breathe the same anymore. It waited. Naira stood between two worlds, one she had just discovered and one that refused to let her go. The 5 silver-eyed figures remained still, their presence steady, unshaken, like they had already seen this moment play out long before she stepped into it. Across from them, Cale stood like a storm barely contained, his energy pressing outward in quiet waves of control that threatened to snap at any second. And in the space between them, Naira felt it clearly now. Not confusion, not fear. A pull. Not toward one side, toward herself. You don't have time to hesitate, Selene said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension without raising itself. Naira didn't look at her, but she heard her, every word. They're already moving, Selene added. The ones who erased your bloodline won't wait now that you've awakened. Naira's chest tightened. That truth felt heavier than anything else said tonight. This wasn't just about who she was anymore. It was about what was coming, and what would follow her no matter where she stood. I'm not going with them, Cale said suddenly, his voice firm, final, not loud, not aggressive, but absolute. Naira's head turned slightly toward him. There was something in his tone she hadn't heard before, not authority, not command, something closer to resistance. You don't know what they want from you, he continued, his eyes locked on hers. And I'm not handing you over to strangers who just appeared the moment your power surfaced. His jaw tightened slightly. That's not a coincidence. It's not, the silver-eyed man replied calmly. Cale's gaze snapped back to him instantly. And that's exactly the problem. Naira exhaled slowly, her mind racing, but not in chaos anymore, in clarity. For the first time, everything felt sharp, defined. She looked at Cale fully now, really seeing him, not just the Alpha King, not just the one who stepped in when she was broken, but the one who still thought he needed to decide for her. You didn't ask me, she said quietly. The words weren't angry, they were honest, and that made them hit harder. Cale stilled. What? He asked, his voice lower now. When you said I belong to you, Naira continued, her gaze steady. You didn't ask me. Silence followed immediately. Not tense, not explosive, just real. Cale didn't respond right away because there was nothing to argue. It was the truth. Naira's chest rose slowly as she held his gaze. I know you were protecting me, she added, softer now, but that doesn't mean you get to choose my life. Something shifted in Cale's expression. Not anger. Not denial. Recognition. But it didn't erase what stood between them. You think they're giving you a choice? He asked quietly, his voice edged with something sharper now. You think they came all this way just to ask? Naira's eyes flicked briefly to the silver-eyed man. He didn't interrupt, didn't deny it. That alone answered more than words could, but Naira didn't look away this time. Then I'll make one anyway, she said. The words landed heavier than any command. Because she meant them. A long silence followed. Then, she stepped forward. Not toward Cale. Not toward them. Forward. Into herself. I'm not going with anyone, she said clearly. The forest stilled. Completely. Cale's eyes narrowed slightly. The silver-eyed man didn't move. Selene watched. "I don't know who I am yet," Naira continued, her voice steady despite the weight of it. "I don't know what this bloodline means. I don't know why they tried to erase it." Her hands clenched slightly at her sides, but her posture didn't break. "But I do know one thing." A pause. Then, "I'm not letting anyone control it again." Silence. But this time, it wasn't uncertain. It was decisive. Kale exhaled slowly, something in his shoulders easing, but not completely, not enough. "And when they come for you," he asked quietly, "because they will," Naira didn't hesitate, "then I'll be ready." The confidence in her voice surprised even her, but it didn't feel false. It felt earned. The silver-eyed man studied her for a long moment, long enough that the tension almost returned. Then finally he nodded. "Good," he said. Naira frowned slightly. Again with that, she muttered under her breath. A faint hint of amusement touched his expression, but it disappeared quickly. "You were never meant to follow," he said. "You were meant to stand." Naira didn't respond, but something in her chest settled at those words. Not comfort, alignment. Then, everything shifted. A sharp, distant sound cut through the forest. Not close, but not far enough. Kale's head snapped toward it instantly. Selene's expression darkened. "They've found you faster than expected," she said quietly. Naira's chest tightened. "Who?" she asked, but she already knew. The answer came not in words, but in presence. The air changed. Heavier, colder, controlled in a way that felt far more dangerous than anything before. And then, from the shadows beyond the clearing, figures emerged. Not wild, not twisted, uniform, disciplined. Their eyes didn't glow red. They didn't glow silver. They were completely black. Empty. Naira's breath caught instantly. Because unlike the others, her wolf didn't recognize them. It recoiled. "They don't have wolves," Selene said softly. Kale's entire body tensed. "What are they?" Naira whispered. Selene's voice dropped lower. "They're what's left, after your kind is erased." Silence crashed over the clearing. Naira's heart pounded violently as the figures stepped forward in perfect sync, their movements unnaturally precise, their presence suffocating in a way that made even Kale's power feel challenged. And then, one of them stepped forward, its gaze locking directly onto Naira. Not with hunger, not with curiosity, with purpose. "Target confirmed," it said. Naira froze. Because the voice wasn't human, and wasn't wolf. It was something else entirely. Something that should not exist. And this time, there was no doubt. They weren't here to take her. They were here to finish what they started. Target confirmed. The words didn't echo, they settled like a verdict already decided. The black-eyed figures moved as one, their steps perfectly aligned, their presence suffocating in a way that pressed against Naira's lungs. No scent, no emotion, no wolf, just emptiness wrapped in flesh. Naira's body reacted instantly, her wolf recoiling deep inside her like it had touched something it couldn't understand. Fear didn't come first. Recognition didn't come at all, just rejection. "Stay behind me," Kale said sharply, stepping forward, his voice cutting through the moment like steel. But Naira didn't move. She couldn't, not because she was frozen, but because something inside her refused to step back again. Not now, not after everything. The forest around them seemed to dim, the night itself bending under the weight of what had just arrived. "They've perfected them," Selene murmured, her voice tight with something close to anger. The silver-eyed figures shifted subtly, forming a loose line near Naira, not protective in the same way Kale was, but aligned. Ready, watching. The one who had spoken stepped closer, its movements unnaturally smooth, its black eyes fixed entirely on Naira. "Genetic anomaly located," it said again, voice flat, mechanical, but not artificial, something worse, something created. "Anomaly will be neutralized." Naira's chest tightened, her breath uneven, but her gaze didn't waver. I'm not an anomaly, she said quietly. The words weren't loud, but they carried. And for the first time, something flickered in those empty eyes. Cale moved first. He didn't wait. Didn't hesitate. Power exploded outward as he shifted mid-stride, his wolf crashing into the front line of the black-eyed figures with brutal force. The impact should have shattered them. It didn't. They moved. Fast. Too fast. Two of them intercepted him instantly, their bodies bending in unnatural ways as they redirected his momentum, forcing him back instead of breaking. The ground cracked beneath them as the force collided, but they didn't fall. Didn't flinch. Cale's growl ripped through the clearing, deeper, angrier, but controlled. He adjusted instantly, striking again, but this time they adapted. Every move, every attack, perfect counters. Naira's breath caught. They're learning, she whispered. Selene nodded once, her expression grim. They were designed to. The silver-eyed man stepped forward next. And everything shifted again. He moved differently, not like Cale's raw power, but precise, controlled in a way that felt older. When he struck, it wasn't brute force, it was intention. One of the black-eyed figures lunged for him, but he caught its arm mid-motion, twisting sharply. A crack echoed, but not bone, something deeper. The figure staggered, not broken, but disrupted. They're not alive, he said calmly, but they're not dead either. That made it worse. Naira's pulse quickened as the battlefield erupted fully now. Wolves clashing, shadows moving, power colliding in ways that blurred the line between control and chaos. But the black-eyed figures didn't break formation. They adjusted, adapted, advanced. And they were still focused on her. Naira stepped back instinctively as one broke through the line, its movement precise, its path direct, toward her. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but this time she didn't freeze. The energy inside her surged again, but stronger now, clearer, controlled. Her hand lifted slowly, the air around it trembling as that invisible force built again, faster this time, more responsive. Stop, she said, not loud, not desperate, just certain. The figure halted mid-step, not fully, not frozen like before. But slowed, resisting. Its black eyes flickered slightly, like something inside it was being pulled in two directions. Naira's breath steadied as she pushed, not physically, but with something deeper. Stand down, she said again. The ground cracked beneath her feet. The air tightened. And for a second, it worked. The figure stopped completely. Silence rippled outward. Even Cale paused mid-strike, his head snapping toward her. Naira's chest rose slowly, her eyes faintly glowing again, but this time the power didn't feel overwhelming. It felt aligned, controlled, like it belonged, like it always had. You don't control me, she said, her voice low but steady. The figure twitched slightly, its head tilting unnaturally. Command rejected, it said, its voice glitching slightly, but holding. Then, it moved again. Faster. Harder. Breaking through her hold. Naira's breath hitched as the connection snapped, the backlash hitting her harder than before. She stumbled slightly, her vision blurring for a second as the figure closed the distance instantly. Too fast, too precise, its hand shot forward. And stopped. Not by her. By Cale. His grip crushed around its throat, his wolf partially shifted, his eyes blazing silver with something far beyond control now. Rage, not wild, not reckless, focused, protective, dangerous in a way that felt personal. You don't touch her, he growled, his voice layered, something deeper echoing beneath it. The figure struggled, but Cale didn't loosen his grip, not even slightly. His gaze flicked briefly to Naira, and in that moment, she felt it. Not dominance. Not control. Connection. And it hit harder than anything else. The figure's body jerked suddenly, then went still. Completely. Cale frowned slightly, his grip tightening instinctively. Then, the black eyes flickered. And turned. Silver. Silence dropped instantly. Naira's breath caught. The figure collapsed. Lifeless. Not broken. Changed. Selene stepped forward slowly, her gaze sharp. That shouldn't be possible, she said quietly. The silver-eyed man looked at Naira. Not surprised. Certain. They're not immune to her, he said. Naira's heart pounded violently as realization hit her. Not fear. Not confusion. Understanding. They weren't made to destroy me, she whispered. Everyone looked at her. Then what? Kale asked. Naira's gaze lifted slowly. They were made to replace me. The words landed like thunder. Silence followed. Heavy. Final. Then, the remaining black-eyed figures shifted. Not forward. Not attacking. Retreating. In perfect sync. Vanishing back into the forest as quickly as they had come. Gone. Just like that. The battlefield stilled. The air lightened, but only slightly. Because nothing had ended. Naira stood there, her chest rising slowly, her body still humming faintly with power, but her mind clearer than it had ever been. They'll come back, she said quietly. No one argued. Because they all knew. Next time, they wouldn't be testing her. They would be ready. And so would she. Dawn didn't break gently. It forced its way through the forest like a truth that could no longer be hidden. The first light cut across the battlefield, revealing what the night had tried to bury: broken ground, scorched earth, and the quiet aftermath of something far bigger than a single fight. Naira stood at the center of it all, her bare feet pressed against the cracked soil, her body still, but her presence changed. The air around her no longer bent in confusion. It settled, aligned. She wasn't trembling anymore, not from fear, not from uncertainty. The storm inside her had not calmed, it had organized. And for the first time in her life, Naira Veilska didn't feel like she was surviving something. She felt like she had stepped into something she was always meant to become. Kale watched her from a few steps away, his wolf long since receded, but his gaze sharper than ever. There was no hesitation in it now, no doubt, only recognition and something far more dangerous beneath it. Not control, not ownership, respect. The kind that came from seeing power and choosing not to stand in its way. You knew, Naira said quietly without turning, her voice steady as the morning air. Kale didn't deny it. I suspected, he replied, but not like this. A pause stretched between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with everything that had changed. Naira finally turned, meeting his eyes fully. I'm not yours, she said, not harsh, not defensive, just clear. Kale nodded once. I know, and for the first time there was no tension in that truth. Behind them, Selene and the silver-eyed figures remained, silent but present, like witnesses to something that had already been written long before this moment. They'll return, Selene said softly. Not just the ones you saw tonight, the ones behind them. Naira's gaze didn't waver. Then let them, she replied. The confidence in her voice wasn't forced. It wasn't borrowed. It came from something deeper, something that had finally rooted itself inside her fully. They spent years trying to erase something they didn't understand, she continued. Now they're going to have to face it. The silver-eyed man stepped forward slightly, studying her with quiet approval. And what will you do? He asked. Naira didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked out at the forest, the same place she had once feared, once felt small within. It didn't feel the same anymore. Nothing did. I'm going to learn, she said finally. Everything they tried to take from me, everything they buried. Her hands relaxed at her sides, but the energy within her didn't fade. It settled, controlled, ready. And when they come back, her gaze sharpened slightly. I won't be the same girl they tried to destroy. Silence followed, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was certain. Kale stepped closer, not in front of her, not blocking her path, but beside her. Equal. Then you won't face them alone, he said quietly. Naira glanced at him. Not surprised. Not resistant. Just aware. That's your choice, she replied. Kale's expression didn't change. It is. A faint, almost invisible smile touched her lips, but it didn't linger, because this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of everything. The silver-eyed figures began to step back slowly, their presence fading into the forest once more, not disappearing but withdrawing, watching, waiting. Selene remained a moment longer, her gaze lingering on Naira with something unreadable, but not distant anymore. You've already changed the course, she said softly. Now you just have to survive it. Then she turned and vanished into the trees. Naira exhaled slowly. The forest was quiet again. But not empty. Never empty. She took one step forward. Then another. Not following anyone. Not being led. Walking her own path. And behind her, the world she thought she belonged to no longer fit. Ahead of her, a world that had tried to erase her was waiting. This time, it wouldn't succeed. Because Naira Veilska was never an Omega. She was never weak. She was never meant to survive quietly. She was meant to rise. To lead. To become something they could not control. Something they could not recreate. Something they could not destroy. And as the sun rose fully over the horizon, her wolf didn't just stir. It stood, fully awake, fully hers, a queen without a throne. Yet, if this story pulled you in, if you felt Naira's rise, her pain, her power, then you already know this world is far from over. There are deeper secrets still buried, stronger enemies still watching, and a destiny that has only just begun to unfold. Stay with the story, because the next chapter won't just reveal what she becomes. It will test whether the world is ready for it.